All right, guys, we are back at last. All right, in front of us is about to be game one of the 10th event of the 7-point Old School Singleton format. I'm joined here today by Evan, who was talking on the intro video. You want to say hi there real quick, Evan?
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Hopefully doing really well. You can see the players right here are in the process of doing the online cutting style where you designate three different piles as 1, 2, and 3, and allows you to kind of cut your opponent's deck remotely. That's Evan on the left side and his opponent Guillaume on the right side. Evan is playing the deck from the intro, which is basically black, red, splash green, land destruction, high quality creature, good stuff deck with lots of disruption and removal. Guillaume playing a very, very heavily control blue-white strategy. I guess you could call it Esper technically, as it has 2 black spells, but pretty much blue-white. They're looking at their opening hands here, and Evan and I will be calling the action as this game unfolds. Do you recall who's going first here, Evan?
Yeah, so I won the dice roll. There's no seed in this top 8, so I got a 3. I called odds, so I'm gonna be on the play.
Off they go. That is a beautiful Vesuvian doppelganger spellground
Oh,
as
thank
well.
you.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
And it's interesting
yeah.
you have
I
it.
put it. I face it towards them because I want them to get distracted by their beautiful eyes.
Yeah, exactly. So Evan's got.
So right off the bat, I make a huge mistake. I play an underground seed when I have another black source in my hand,
And
and it
now.
turns out
And
because that
that's,
can
yeah,
activate
explain
his
why
color.
that's a deal. Yeah, what did he play there? I guess that's just the plains.
I think so. I
Oh,
can't see it that well.
yeah, him to Torek. It looks like a plains or maybe a scrubland actually. I think it's a scrubland. So you got him right off the bat. Brutal. So good to get
Yeah,
that on turn 2. And we'll see how you
yeah.
determine it.
Turn two, I just want to cast Hammer Sinkhole, and I got
And you
better
pick
of
the
the two.
corners. Strip Mine and Maze of Ith. Pretty solid targets, I'd say. Getting Strip Mine in
Oh,
particular, so good as he could potentially cut you off of one of your colors for a while.
oh yeah.
All right, we'll see what Guillaume does here second. Looks like he's got Mishra's Factory and a Felwar Stone. Aha, there you go. And you've got both City of Brass and Underground Sea in play. So you're feeding him blue, white, and every other color you might ever want.
Yeah, this felt really bad. I think I had other sources too in hand. I don't recall exactly, but felt bad.
Ah, you've got a nice little punish for it anyway in the form of a Detonate. Reducing him
Yep,
down to just white and generic mana. Not where his deck definitely wants to be.
yep.
So back to Guillaume's turn. And keep in mind, as we pointed out before, his deck is not running a ton of mana. He's only running 22 land and a Felwar Stone. And he anemically, with his pure control deck, just attacks for 2 damage and passes the turn. When you see that, that's got to feel pretty good as the LD guy. Evan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just mentioning that it has to feel great to see that when your opponent playing the control deck and you're playing land destruction, and he just doesn't even have a land on turn 3.
Yeah, yeah. It's this. My deck sort of takes advantage of mana screws pretty aggressively.
Yeah, full punish.
Yeah.
Down comes Mr. Troll. So
This is the best possible thing that I can play turn 3 or 4.
yeah, do you recall what you have in hand right now?
I don't really remember. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean,
But
inevitably these cards will show up anyway, but it does sort of
yeah,
dictate the strategy. You are occasionally flashing the bottom card of your hand to the camera,
I
so I'll try to keep an eye out on
you
that.
know I have to work on that. I've got an important game coming up tomorrow night, and I will be playing with my hand differently.
Yeah, it's
Thanks for
really
pointing that out.
yeah it's really hard to avoid doing that because you're not used to having someone looming over your battlefield while you're playing. And it
Yep.
looks like Guillaume has found blue mana at least, so he's not going to be completely cut off of his colors. Trolls crashing in here. Yeah, the Sedge Troll is just such a beater in this format. The amount of outs that most decks have against it is somewhere between 0 and maybe 2. You've got another land here.
Yeah, I play a fair amount of lands. I mean, getting the right color combination can be tricky, but I should be dropping a land 5 out of the first 6 turns.
All right, what's your target here with the Stone Rain?
Oh, the island.
Going
I'm trying to
from
keep him off blue because he has lots of double blues that are important.
I see. And so you opted for Island over Plains just because of the double blue factor?
Yep, yep. I decided that the double white cards weren't as a big of a factor like Wrath of God. I mean, he's going to get one creature probably. Oh, and he doesn't. Looks like he doesn't have a land drop here.
Yeah, so surprising that he would actually attack there for 2 damage.
Yeah,
Given the fact
I'm
that you've
showing
got
Bolt and Shatter.
Bolt and Shatter, yeah. When his mana is this precious, I can't say I agree with that attack. I know that having played a bit against a lot of the French players, they really, really like attacking with Mishra's Factory. It's like they can't help it. And down comes Jam Day Tome. Wow, this is your draw is phenomenal here. He's got to have basically Divine Offering or Disenchanter. This game's going to get out of control real quick.
Yeah, this is typically I disrupt people a little bit. Either I've done him and land destruction, and then a lot of times they can't handle my book.
Yep, that's the case right now. Jam Day Tome unbridled. It's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, I think I don't remember much about this game because it might have been a quick one.
And we're watching right now. So I'm seeing Sinkhole.
Oh my gosh,
that's just so brutal. So interesting
and
choice.
I go for the colored source.
Yeah, interesting choice there to elect to Sinkhole over just over waiting on the tome, maybe drawing a card to see if you do hit another land drop. What was your decision there behind just making sure to kill the white mana versus drawing a card?
I'm more interested. He's just kind of limited on land. He's missing land drops, and I more just want to soft lock him rather than. I figure I can accelerate later, but that may be incorrect. I like your line of thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't know that you've got a land on top of your deck. It's just a matter of really estimating what kind of resistance he can mount with 2 mana. Does he have balance in his deck? I believe that he does, and I think that if he does in fact have balance, I'd have to check the deck list. It's just hard for me to do it with this player. Guardian Beast comes down to make sure that Jam Day Tome's not going anywhere. Yeah, this game's trickling away rather quickly. He just discarded the Tetravis as well, so there's just no hope in a million years of ever casting a 6-drop at all. And I can see you tapping your fingers, nervously waiting for him to discard. He discards a double white card in the form of Witch Hunter. You've got Guardian Beast, 5 damage a turn plus a tome. We know where this game is going. I think we may actually just probably we're just going to go straight in. No attack with Guardian Beast. Oh, I guess you're just doing that to protect your Jam Day Tome. Don't even want to attack with it.
Yeah, I figured it didn't add to the clock. It's being a little paranoid. He could Divine Offering, but
yeah, he could Divine Offering, but I guess you're right. It's sort of inevitable at that point. All right, well, I'm not going to actually end the video. I was planning on doing each game individually, but I think because that game was so quick, we can probably just segue straight into game 2 and just include the 2 games together, as that was quite a swift beating. Yeah, I mean, that really looked like your deck firing on all cylinders there. Early disruption in the form of Hymn to Torak. You had a Stone Rain to kill off his blue mana source. You had the Sinkhole to take out the white mana source, and Guillaume's deck was really punished for the fact that he's running such a fragile mana base.
The Detonate on the Felwar Stone.
Yeah, and Detonate on Felwar Stone as well. Yeah, cutting off. And remember, you hemmed away the strip mine as well. So you killed 4 mana sources in that game, and he ended the game with just Mishra's Factory in play and couldn't do anything whatsoever. And this is kind of one of the reasons. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why you're playing this Jund strategy. It can definitely just do this in a sizable portion of games, particularly against decks that aren't presenting a lot of aggressive action.
Yes, yeah. When they give me time to set things up, and his deck just doesn't have many threats. It does have some locking potential with the Guardian Beast Chaos Orb combo, and then just with Time Elemental, and then the what's the name of the witch that bounces stuff?
It's called Witch Hunter. Yeah, Witch Hunter.
Witch Hunter. Yes.
And getting back to the question that I posed about you deciding to Sinkhole the Scrubland over using Jam Day Tome to draw, I think it's 100% the right decision by you because of the fact that he has balance. And in that situation, really his only way back into the game is to top deck balance. And if you kill off if you kill off the Scrubland, he not only has to, we know he doesn't have balance, right, because he would have played it. So he needs to draw another white mana and then draw balance before he dies. So I 100% agree with your decision to do that over drawing a card. It was completely the right play. All right, so we're back to very, very quick shuffling already. You've already done the cutting, and you're eager to get your opening 7 here.
Guillaume, I play a little fast. It's something I need to work on just to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think it does pay big dividends, particularly when it comes down to making more calculated decisions. Part of that might just be a consequence of the familiarity with your deck, but I always find that even in decks that I've played literally thousands and thousands of times, like when I played the deck, I find that it's almost always good to be. Get a little shot of your handsome face there for a second as the camera picks up.
I've gained 30 pounds in the pandemic.
What are you guys?
I've lost 10 of them.
What are you guys discussing right now?
Oh, I was talking about how my dad lived in Paris after World War II.
Oh, I see.
My dad was maybe 62 years old when I was born, so he actually was a guerrilla fighter in World War II.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
did he?
He's no longer on this earth, but he's in my heart, and I have very fond memories of my father.
you have my condolences about that. He so I assume was he fight? Where was he fighting?
He was in Yugoslavia at the time, or Croatia, Yugoslavia, um, and he was just a guerrilla fighter, and fighting against the Italians, and then later the Germans.
Later,
So
yes.
this is a huge mistake right here. I had multiple black sources. I was saying that was last game, but that was this game.
Okay, so it's this game. I see.
It's this game.
So you give him, so the Underground Sea, yeah, it may seem innocuous to the viewers right now, but keep in mind, Guillaume is playing a lot of cards that cost double blue in his deck, and by playing Underground Sea, you potentially activate his Felwar Stone and give him access to a critical second blue mana, particularly after you're willing to strip mine an island on turn 2, which to me is a very aggressive play. I understand why you might do it, because is this going to be a Felwar Stone? It is a Felwar Stone, so he's got blue mana again.
Yeah, so this was just a huge mistake. You'll see I'll drop a swamp here, I think.
Yep.
And I just feel I'm just regretting that. Again, playing a little too fast. I had when I analyzed this deck, I had noticed that was a possibility. I needed to watch out for that.
Mm-hmm.
I only have one blue card in my whole deck, so it's just very, very small amount of benefit. Oh my gosh! And I flashed that Stone Rain.
Yeah, you flashed it multiple times. I saw that. So yeah, just be careful. The way that you can actually avoid doing this is really simple. Just before you play your spells, just set the other cards down on the table. So just basically set the cards down, announce the spell, and then play it while keeping your cards face down. That'll be one way to avoid the webcam. I mean, again, it's not a thing we normally have to think about when we play tabletop Magic, but in this new era of pandemic webcam Magic, it is something to consider. So he's got a Tundra. He now has double blue and double white. His deck is basically set up, and although you do have the Stone Rain, but he can now mount some resistance with his counter magic, and potentially stop you from taking out that Tundra with the Stone Rain. Down comes the Orb. So the question is, does he use it? I see him standing up, so it's clearly going to be activated. And he'll probably kill your Badlands, I imagine, since he needs that blue mana from the Underground.
Yes.
He says go. Wow. Okay. Well, you're not going to even hesitate to Stone Rain Tundra, I imagine.
Yeah, Tundra is just his best land. It's that and City of Brass. Does he have City of Brass?
He does have City of Brass, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Those two are auto destroys for me. I mean, as far as in my brain.
Yeah. So Guillaume gets insta punished for not destroying the Badlands.
I don't think it'd be wise for him to destroy the Badlands because I just run so much land. I just don't know why he put the Chaos Orb out. Other than why run it out exactly? I don't get how it helps him. Rather than, I think it'd be better to surprise me.
Oh, just to keep the mana untapped?
Yeah, well, that's another benefit too. He can threaten counter magic, and now I can't. If I do a detonate on it, I can kill it effectively. I mean,
he did have mana available. He did have mana available though, so he could always use it in response. See, now I believe he's using the orb now. So if he's intending to use Chaos Orb on this turn, then certainly he should have done it last turn. That would have preserved his Tundra.
Yeah, you're right.
We'll see if he hits. When he played against me, he was very accurate with it. And in fact, he had a nightmare situation going against me, which I'll talk about. I'll leave it. I'll leave it to the video when I eventually cover that match with commentary. Nice. 3 mana here. Guillaume Tome.
So I was sitting here feeling so good because I can improve the quality of my hand. I can get that second black source if I need it. I have a lot of great things I can do with that tome. So let's see what happens.
He's thinking right here. I would certainly expect from the control deck something along the lines of Divine Offering or Disenchant, as they're both pretty ubiquitous in all the white decks, and we know that they're definitely in Guillaume's deck. They're one of the, in my opinion, one of the primary reasons to play white, period, in this format. It's because it gives you access to those 2 cards. And he's got Divine Offering, down goes Guillaume Tome, and he gains 3 life in the process. So it looks like it's, 3 cards in hand to 3 or 4? I don't know what you have.
Right.
I saw...
And I have no recursion, so that thing's gone forever.
Yep, no recursion at all. Do you recall what you might have in hand? I keep seeing
I
the
think I
edge of
have a
something.
book in hand. Yeah.
Oh, the bigger version.
Yeah. So I was kind of happy that he wasted it. In my mind, he was wasting it.
You consider it a
Because
waste to kill Jalen Tom.
because I get, yeah, but then let's see what he does here. And I'm so mad. I'm so bummed here.
Oh, steel artifact.
It's the worst possible
Yeah, worse.
response.
And look, that
And again, here,
Feller stone, exactly. Do you have
the
another land in
Felwer
hand though? Do you have any more land in hand? Because if you don't have land in hand, if you don't have a black source in particular, then you've had no opportunity to play any black spells. So there's a bayou, so you're forced
I
to.
believe I had a Bayou the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, so you did have the opportunity to not give him access to double blue, and you could have just rid the tome. At this point, you got to play a disc sheepishly and kill off your own
Feels
thing.
so bad.
But it's not the worst thing in the world. It is going to kill a mana source from him, and it is going to be 2
Yep.
for 2. He's going to be able to draw at least one card if he doesn't have a way to kill your disc off.
That's totally true. Yeah, it feels. Yeah, I feel quite sheepish doing that because I put myself in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Although he could have done it the next turn, but still, even that one turn of drawing a card.
Yeah, even that one
a lot.
turn can make a really big difference. You don't really know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Every little decision can affect the outcome here. So Guillaume is considering. He's obviously made very uncomfortable by the minerals disc, and he's just going to pass the turn back. And I imagine you're not going to hesitate at all to use the disc. There's just no screwing around with the Jam Day Tome in play.
No, I can't let him untap again with it.
I saw Volcanic Island in your hand right there. Tapping 4. Oh, okay, so it is the Guardian Beast. I've been wondering what that card was, but the proxy nature of it makes it hard to discern. So you're playing the. What's your thought behind playing Guardian Beast here?
I think I wanted to preserve the disc. I don't, because he has kind of a lot. He has Icy, Tana's Coffin, and I can kind of prevent those from coming out. But I don't. It feels kind of weird. I think you're right. It's a little iffy.
It does strike me as a little bit iffy just because of the fact that the Guardian Beast has so much utility against him. Though the fact that he's lost Divine Offering definitely makes he has a, 1 or 2 artifact kill, and actually he's used his Chaos Orb as well. So he literally only has one way to kill an artifact left in his deck short of recursion, and that's just the disenchant. So maybe playing the Beast to preserve the disc against future threats is good, because there are certainly plenty of things that he could play that would really, really make your life miserable.
Yep.
Like his own tome, for example, right? He could just follow up with a Jam Day Tome here.
Yeah, it's pluses and minuses, but yeah, the Guardian Beast is quite strong. Maybe I was just worried about him control magicking it after that steel artifact. That was so traumatic. I mean,
yeah, I was going to just make a comment about steel artifact. It's so cool that there's a format, an old school format, where steel artifact is a really viable all-star card. It is so good in this format. It's a total powerhouse. Yeah, nobody has played with steel artifact in decades, literally, until this format came along. I've certainly looked at it. I have beta sheets. I have a sheet of common, uncommon, and rares, the original sheets hanging on my wall. And whenever I'm talking about and looking at those cards, and I see Steel Artifact, and the card has just so much potential. But even back when when Magic was dominated by artifact-based decks, you know, the decks running Disrupting Scepters and Jam Day Tomes, nobody ever played Steel Artifact. It was just never ever used because you just needed to opt to have the guaranteed nature of Disenchant and Divine Offering. Oh, look, we've got a disc versus disc situation.
Yeah, so he really doesn't like my disc, so I guess I sort of lucked out. I mean, I don't think he'd play the disc if he didn't have something to follow up with, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that both of your decks are long and grindy, and I think that just having a disc in play just gives him at least some sort of agency over when the disc happens, rather than, and keep in mind, you're the guy playing discard, right? So if he sits there and sandbags a whole bunch of cards, and his hand becomes more and more vulnerable to the Mind Twist that he knows you have in your deck. So at least if he has a disc in play, he can keep the board under control and has some way to stop something really devastating like Demonic Horde. So he's going to just disc right now.
Wow.
No way to stop that for either of you. So both discs resolve, and I guess he must be wanting to play something here, because otherwise that's a bit premature. We'll see what Guillaume does. He's definitely not interested in bluffing counterspells, and he's got Time Elemental. But surely you must have. Yeah, you must have an answer to that, given the fact you've played no red spells at all. And you've got a Terror, of course, so it's just going away.
Yeah, that feels so good.
Yeah,
That
that
feels
is.
so good.
Now that's the advantage of black and red versus blue and white. Time Elemental is one of those cards that, for my deck at least, is just a total nightmare. The card you never ever ever want to face. Down comes Icy Manipulator. All right,
Beautiful.
pretty handy card to have. So what are you tapping here
And
during
now I
upkeep?
can keep them off blue.
Yep.
Double blue.
Still worried about double
So,
blue. Okay.
so again, I'm just, how do I keep him off double blue? That's all I'm trying to. That's my one prong of my strategy to beat him.
Gotcha. Yeah, Icy is another. It's another one of those cards that's really an all-star in this format, because not only because just we have a limited number of artifact kill spells and a limited number of just good impactful cards in general, but because the format is so filled up. There's an Argivian Archaeologist coming down. The format is so filled up with things costing double blue, double black, and so on. The ability to often just tap your opponent's second island or second planes and keep him off. There's a fissure coming down. It feels so bad having to fissure away a 1/1, but I totally understand. Guillaume's graveyard is stacked with artifacts.
He's got Chaos Orb, Nev Disc. I mean,
yeah, it's a who's who.
Not to mention Felwar Stone.
Yeah, and Felwar Stone, right? And Jam Day. And does he have a Jam Day time? No, I guess he doesn't have Jam Day time. He's going to play his own Icy here. So we've got dueling Icies. They pretty much nullify each other.
Yeah, this is always weird. There's sort of like a cycle that you get into, and one Icy can be better than the other, kind of.
And I noticed he's actually opting to use his Icy. It looks probably going to be on land, right? During upkeep. I guess he's thinking about that. You've got.
I guess he wants to get me back.
He can't shut you off really anything except for double red. That's all he can stop.
The only thing he can stop here is like Demonic Hordes.
Yeah, it's literally Demonic Hordes or Shivan, right? Those are the only things that can stop. And who knows what's in his hand? He may even have control magic at this point, so he may actually be wanting you to cast Shivan Dragon.
So here in this part of the game, I'm feeling terrible because normally I have at least one of my books running at this point in the game.
You did draw both of them, but we know that they're gone forever. It's going to be really hard for you to. Did you consider the card Greed at all, or do you think it's too greedy?
No, it's just too situated. I mean, it's so bad against the aggro decks and the red decks.
Totally true.
Not bad, but it's dangerous. Let's say.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say it's bad. I'm not afraid to call things bad when they're good, 1 out of 10 times. That I would say objectively the card's bad. But
yeah,
sure.
In my head, I sort of rebuilt my deck for this month, and it made it to the top 8 or so, top 4 or top 8. So pretty happy. But I was thinking a little more about aggro when I built my deck this time.
Yeah.
So
you have to consider it. I mean, in terms of the decks that are the easiest to construct as well, in terms of the mana base and just sort of interchangeability of cards in the format, that aggro decks are absolutely the easiest to build. Consider the mono red goblin deck that made it all the way to the semifinals of the current event.
That's my 12-year-old self. That was like one aspect of myself. I love playing Goblin Grenade. That was my favorite card.
Yes,
like it was so fun.
But that deck was so cheap and easy to build. I mean, the whole deck I think was probably worth about, I don't know, $5 or something. and I believe it got all the way to the semifinals.
Oh yeah, it's a great deck.
All right.
Yeah, so he just put a Tetris out, and I don't want to. If he splits that up, I have no answer.
Really, no answer, right? To 4 1/1 artifact creatures. You don't have you opted not to play Hurricane, which to me was a little bit interesting. But I guess it's a green card, and you just don't have a lot of ability to cast green art. Chaos Orb flattens.
Thinking about it for next month, but I'm not. I think it's good because it'll kill a Script Sprite, right? And it'll kill a Sarah.
Yeah, it'll kill it. Exactly. It's very flexible, and sometimes you're just ahead, and the ability to burn your opponent matters. In the version of this deck that I built, and I told you it had a higher green component, I actually ran the If Biff Freed as well for that very reason.
So check out his mana. He's still on 1 island.
Yep, still on 1 island. Exactly. Cannot cast anything that costs double blue for now. And he keeps tapping your Bayou over your Icy, which would actually give him, if he started going after your Icy, then he could get access to double blue mana and activate his counterspell. So I'm not sure whether that means he doesn't have anything costing double blue in hand, or whether or not he just doesn't recognize that he can do that. But maybe, I mean, at this point, there's nothing you can't cast really in your entire deck, short of Shivan if he decides to tap the mountain. He's not doing that, so it's not really going to If I were him, I think I would take over and start tapping the Icy Manipulator instead. So he's got a strip mine now, so at least that can affect the mana. He can actually cut you off of green.
Yep.
Let's see what he's doing here.
Is it Coffin?
Triskelion. Nice. Yeah.
Triskelion.
Triskelion,
Okay.
this is such a ubiquitous card in the format in so many decks to the point where I heard people actually questioning whether or not it should be pointed. And of course, I think that's, yeah, I mean, I think that's,
mana, dude.
Yeah, that's silly. It's 6 mana. It is really, really strong, obviously. And it is very, very good in Guillaume's deck due to the fact that he has both Argivian Archaeologist, which we saw before, and he has Taunus' Coffin, and he has a detonated Triskelion dealing a boatload of damage. But he can actually avoid taking 6 here. Hopefully he recognizes it and he does not see it. That's definitely a mistake.
That's an old trick. I mean, if you want to reanimate it, or if you want to, there's just reasons to kill it off. Like if they control magic it or steal artifact it, you shoot 2 at the opponent's face and then you shoot 1 at himself.
Right, and he could have avoided 6 damage by doing that. Instead, he opted to do a 1 point to you, which I can't say is a particularly good trade.
Yeah, got the better end of that one.
But it did tap you out now, and he's got Factory and a Strip Mine going. You have 2 cards in hand. Do you have any recollection of what you're holding currently?
I think I'm just holding lands. I think it's a handful and nothing.
Okay.
I really kind of rely on those books mid-game.
Yeah, and this is an example of where Mishra's Factory can just show up in mid-game and suddenly just start dealing a consistent 2 points of damage. I 100% guarantee Guillaume will be attacking with it. And yeah, again, as we said before, I think he should be tapping your Icy Manipulator right now rather than a Bayou, because you can mitigate damage now using your Icy to prevent his Factory from dealing 2 to you every turn. Maybe he'll figure this out actually after this turn. He's asking you to tap during upkeep. I assume you're just saying no.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tap the Factory now. I mean,
of course.
He could have potentially good blue cards, but I gotta kind of let that go in favor of the definite damage he can deal.
I completely agree. Yes, absolutely. All right.
Yeah, so this just doesn't do anything.
What is he doing right now with this tap?
He's tapping my Icy. So I tap his Mishras in response.
Okay,
so
yeah,
it's kind of not quite the right interaction.
Yeah, it's definitely not the right sequencing. And that's something I've actually kind of noticed about a number of the players who've been playing in these 7-point Old School Singleton formats. You and I have been playing the game forever, but there are a lot of people who are actually kind of coming into this format after either having taken a long break from Magic or are just really excited to play with a lot of these old cards, having not really played a ton of Magic in general. And some of the interactions that might seem really obvious to us as very veteran players are a little bit more vague. I kind of see this all the time, and it's really remarkable to me. I've played a lot of test games of Old School against various friends of mine who are willing to kind of sit down and play Magic with me, and a lot of them are very experienced as Old School players, but they don't understand the most basic things about even creature combat. And certainly, once a couple of Mishra's Factories start to get into play, it's just a mystery to everybody. They have no idea how they interact.
Oh yeah, if you bolt at the wrong time and they got 2 Mishras out, I mean, you just take it. You just pump your Factory. Boom.
Exactly. There's just mistakes get made endlessly about that. So Taunus' Coffin has come down. You want to talk about the Coffin a little bit in the format?
Yeah, the Coffin's really scary for me because it generally in the format, it's kind of slow, but it's sort of like a Maze of Ith, effectively. It just sort of takes whatever the biggest threat is off the table, and then he has to keep it tapped. So yeah, so I know that I'm just going to tie up some mana, like by casting the Sedge Troll.
Yeah, no, it seems to make perfect sense. You've given him a nice little target for the Coffin. And of course, the Coffin has the extra added gigantic benefit of being able to protect your own guys. If you have a Taunus' Coffin and something like a Time Elemental in play, your opponent's going to need 2 instant speed removal spells, or at least a sorcery and then an instant speed removal spell to get rid of your creature, which is pretty damn good value. It's a card I actually considered for my own blue-white deck, and I ultimately decided it was just a little bit outside the range of what I wanted, because I felt like the card Icy. Is he finally going to tap the Icy? He did. All right, he tapped Icy at the end of the turn, and he's actually going to untap Taunus' Coffin too, since he has so much mana. So your Sedge Troll actually pops out of the Coffin and should be tapped.
Oh, I think he meant to keep it tapped.
Oh, okay, so he left it tapped. Okay. So the Troll is effectively out of play.
He came on and just made sure it stayed tapped.
Yep. And of course, in Guillaume's deck, the Coffin has a lot of extra value because he's running 2 cards, those 2 big artifact creatures for antiquities, both the Triskelion and the Tetravus. and you can remove counters off of the Tetravis, put 3/1/1 flyers into play, and then coffin it at end of turn, untap, and it comes back out tapped. But you can remove the counters again, so you can use it to generate 3/1/1s every single turn. It's like triple hive for 3 mana instead of 5. It's completely insane. And obviously the same thing with the Triskelion. You can use Triskelion to reset. You can reset the counters on the Triskelion every turn too, and deal 3 and 3 and 3 and 3 and 3 and just gun them down with it. So Tonus's Coffin,
brutal.
very, very, very powerful when combined with those two particular artifact creatures. And if you are running them, I think the Coffin becomes overwhelmingly strong. And as a result of that, actually, the card has gotten so expensive on the secondary market. Oh, there they are, the mighty hordes.
Oh, this is my favorite card. I mean, this is just, I won't go into all the reasons, but it's just, you could kill as many lands as you want. And I tried, I'm the kid that tried to make a Dingus land destruction deck work back in the day. And yes, I had my blue control aspect of me, but I like land destruction a lot too.
Yeah, the hordes they're so impressive and kind of a weird outlier among a lot of the creatures that were made back in that era. Obviously, they have a crazy upkeep, but a huge, efficient, like 5/5 black creature just in general with this crazy ability attached. They're one of those cards when you first played against it back in the unlimited or beta days, and you just had a really bad experience against it. You're like, wait, I can't.
So
nothing kills it. I can't tear it. It kills one of my lands every turn. Like, how can this be a thing? It's just totally unfair. So we'll see what he's thinking about doing here. I suspect that he either have an answer for this right now. Okay, so he's killing some mana. Gotta wonder about what's going on here with that.
There is a slight risk that if I went down below 3 black sources, if I can't pay upkeep, then it becomes tapped, and I lose a land of my opponent's choice.
Oh my god! And then you fall down into a permanent abyss, right? If he gets you below 3, then the hordes will happily just munch on all of your lands gleefully as they effectively take you out of the game.
So you go from 3 to 2, and then you go from 2 to 1.
Yep. One really nice advantage about so Wrath of God finally happens, and you still got your Icy at least to mitigate the factory. That factory has not attacked you at least 3 or 4 times at this point, so I'm sure you're quite grateful for that.
Yeah.
But one big advantage of the Demonic Hordes too is that, as you just mentioned, because of that gigantic onerous upkeep, they're pretty much immune to theft from a deck like a blue-white control deck.
That's very true.
Some really weird fringe case, like in my deck, because I'm running Scrubland and Underground Sea and Felwar Stone and stuff, I could conceivably get a situation where I steal Demonic Hordes and I'm able to upkeep it.
I don't think they'd do it against me because I would just blight something.
Blight something, exactly. You can imagine how bad that would feel. You're like, oh god, I got to draw a 3rd black mana source here. All right. Volcanic Island finally coming out of your hand here. You're not worried about Bounce when you get in. And there's Mind Twist. All right. And he's got to have a counterspell here. It's been so long.
Well, he's only got 1 blue open, right?
Yeah, he tapped his blue mana, and his hand is Guardian Beast, Spirit Link, double island.
Oh, he didn't have it anyway.
Yeah, and he's been holding these islands. Why has he been doing that against the LD deck? Interesting.
I guess he wants to bait my land destruction on his islands. I mean, it was working.
Yeah, and he hasn't been able to cast Guardian Beast. This is obviously one of the problems with Guillaume's deck, in that he is running black cards with very, very few black mana sources. And
so one card that I've been lucky not to see is Land Tax. Land Tax is poison for my deck.
Total poison, exactly. Yeah, he drew it against me a bunch of times, actually, and it seemed like every opponent I played against who had Land Tax just always had it in their opening hand. But, of course, given the fact that it's a singleton format, they're not going to have the card very often. Probably, I think, 1 in about 8 games on average. All right, so you tapped his Icy, so you still got Icy Initiative. But
yes.
Hopefully we'll see. I mean, you're in a really bad spot here, honestly. As you said, your hand is all land.
Nothing.
You have nothing, and he's got Factory backed up by Tonus's Coffin. Okay, this is a big X spell. You're just gonna reach across the table and
twisted him, so I figure it's free.
Yeah, just reach across the table and deal a bunch of damage to his face. What is this for? About 8?
Let's see. We'll see how the life total goes down.
Yeah, he went from 17 to that's a 10-point disintegrate. Holy moly! All right. Yeah, unfortunately, that means you just need Earthquake as a finisher. You can't win with Fireball, and he may, in fact, have top deck to counterspell here anyway. He's not running Mana Drain. We know he's got Power Sink, Spell Blast, and Counterspell, and he hasn't drawn any of those yet. But at least attack with the Factory, Guillaume. Get in there. Okay, no, so it's just for 9. You guys were correct.
Yeah, I miscounted, But I corrected myself. Yeah. I have honor.
Of course. All right, so Guillaume's thinking here. It's got to be an attack with the Factory, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no resistance. You have one card in hand and no untapped mana. And finally, Mishra's Factory gets to come in for damage.
You know, maybe he was holding back his islands in his hand because he was hoping to draw balance and kind of limit my lands a bit.
That is an extremely valid point. Although he wasn't really
Maybe.
that far. I mean, he's got 8 land in hand in play versus your 9.
Yeah, it's not a huge effect, but it's something.
Oh, Maze of Ith. And that's a punish right there.
Clutch.
Yeah, that's so clutch. And now he's honestly punished for using that strip mine earlier. Again, when you're playing in the old school singleton format, you have to be thinking not only about what's currently going on in the game and in your hand, but also the range of what your opponent might draw down the road to answer potential threats. So a card like Strip Mine answers. Down comes Island of Wak Wak. A card like Strip Mine answers, just sitting in play, answers a card like Maze of Ith, which might in fact shut down your Mishra's Factory. And now Guillaume has no offense at all, and it's a very, very narrow range of things that he can actually win the game with here. So I think we're going to be in for a long battle.
So he didn't attack for some reason. So he didn't declare attack phase, so I didn't have to tap his Mishras. So I was able to tap his Icy. I mean, it's not a huge game, but it's just a small little advantage if you get the Icy mechanics right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, having Icy initiative, always having command of it. You flashed a desert at the screen there.
Completely useless against his deck,
yeah.
except against Tetravites.
Yeah,
I guess that's my one answer to Tetravites.
Yeah, that is actually a decent answer over many, many turns, unless he's got something like Thomas's Coffin in play. But how many artifact kill spells do you have left? I guess you have both your Shatter. No, you detonated the Triskelion. Oh, and down comes Jalen Tome. Very potentially problematic.
So I'm very worried at this point because he's going to be able. He has essentially gas, and I have no gas.
Yeah,
I'm just sitting here drawing lands, getting frustrated.
Very, very frustrating. Yeah, both of your tomes are gone, and you're sitting there thinking, "Man, I wish I had at least one of those things left, or God, maybe even greed, even at 13."
Yeah, no, I would do it at this point.
Yeah, but you can't.
A little pressure.
But you can't know that you're going to be playing against blue-white control. Oh, and you do have a Shatter. Right? Will we see a counter? Will we see a counter spell?
I'm clapping for myself.
Yeah, and he tapped his blue mana over a factory or something to tapped his blue mana over a factory in order to cast it. So he's discarding an island. Away goes Jalen Tome. So at least you can breathe a sigh of relief there about that.
Wow.
And we go back into draw go again.
Yep, which is better than being with Jalen Tome on his side.
And Guillaume has Brain Geyser in his deck, and I don't know if that's going through your head right now about whether or not, when that card shows up, whether or not it's going to have the gigantic impact on the game. But you don't have your Mind Twist anymore. You don't have Wheel of Fortune. There's no real way to punish him if he does, in fact, draw Brain Geyser. And if you were to draw Brain Geyser here, it's going to be a Brain Geyser for about 6 cards, and might be ultimately decisive. He does have a lot of good answers left in his deck still. He's got the Control Magic. He has the Swords of Plowshares. He has doesn't really have a lot of offense, though, as we determined before, since his deck is so pure control-y. This is kind of the situation with my blue-white deck where it's or my take on this archetype where you just drop fatties. Like, you just cast creatures on them, and they eventually got to deal with them.
It's kind of like, I do a lot of booster drafting. That's kind of my favorite format. And sometimes you have to take a creature over a removal spell because creatures can act as removal.
Exactly. Yeah, particularly the big butt creatures, right? The creatures with 4 and 5 and 6 toughness.
Yep.
So he's copy artifact. That's got to be a copy of Icy Manipulator. Although I think in this situation, I would actually be reluctant to even copy Icy. I think I might make a second factory.
If he copied a Mishra's, like activate Mishra's, copy it. That's not an obvious play if you're not familiar with these mechanics. But that works really well. That would be pretty decisive here.
Yeah, it would be very, very. He'd put you in that spot where you're taking 2 damage a turn, and with the Coffin defending both factories, it would be extremely difficult for you, I think, to really mount. Anyway, it's remarkable to me actually how few creatures you've actually drawn in this matchup. You've only really drawn just the Sedge Troll and the Demonic Hordes, right? You haven't seen Gwendolyn.
I'm cursed. I got the Gwendolyn curse. I haven't drawn a single card from her ever. Yeah,
imagine
so frustrating.
Imagine how good. Oh, and I'm not talking about Zira, but imagine how good Zira Arian would be here, right? The card that we were maligning so much.
The first time ever. No, it'd be straight Thanos Coffin. I wouldn't even get to draw a card still.
Yep. Okay, so he's tapping Maze of Ith at the end of the turn. Looks like he's attacking with Factory, and he finally gets in for another 2 damage. That takes you down to 11. And if he draws,
he's missed possibly 4, 6 damage already.
I think it's probably more than that, actually. I think about 6 turns went by when he was just mucking around with your lands with the Icy when he could have been tapping your. And that is a Prodigal Sorcerer. All right, the clock has increased.
11-turn clock.
Yeah, and you took 2 damage, so I think you should be at 11 rather than he didn't adjust your life total. I think you're at 11.
Yeah, I have my dice are at 11.
Yeah. Did you see? Yeah, we need to create a sort of standardized way for keeping track of life. There was some confusion in my the matches that I recorded as well, where
Yeah.
my opponent McKell and I had me at different life. I had myself at 1 life lower than what he had on his dice.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it could have actually really affected some of his decisions. I see you have pyrotechnics.
Like
I think you have pyrotechnics in your hand. Yeah, I think I saw it.
I think I'm gonna tap a lot. Yeah. Okay, I flashed it already. Damn.
Yeah. So he actually, because of the way that his mana is tapped, he does not have the ability to protect the Prodigal Sorcerer with the Tanos' Coffin, which is unfortunate. Yeah, how did all of his mana get tapped there? He cast the Sorcerer. What was the 2 land tap for? I guess it was ice. Icy and activation. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can imagine if that copy of Icy Manipulator were a second factory. He would have been able to coffin to protect the Prodigal Sorcerer, or you probably would have not just you would not have cast Pyrotechnics at all. You probably would have just waited to try to burn his face with it.
I hope I'm that good of a player, yeah. But I might have forgotten about the Tanos Coffin because I don't think of it defensively.
Yeah,
right?
And there was actually a period in time for quite some years, actually, because of what was called the 6th edition rules, which I think were brought in around 1996, 1997, when they changed the way that the stack worked. And for a time, until it was corrected years later because it was so non-intuitive, you could actually stack damage in combat with your creatures. You may have been taking a hiatus when this was going on, but you could stack damage.
I probably missed it.
Effectively assign damage to a blocker or an attacker, and then if you removed your blocker or attacker from combat before damage resolved, the damage was still on the stack.
That's terrible.
And would kill the creature. So you could.
That's terrible.
So you could block. Yeah, if they attack with a 5/5, you block with your 5/5, and then you throw your Tanos' Coffin or your creature into the coffin. Their creature dies, and your creature lives.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and it worked.
You can't separate the damage. That damage like that. Wow.
Yeah, and it worked with unsummons and all the other effects that did that.
Capsize, I remember.
Yeah, Capsize could do it too. Just anything that allowed you to bounce a creature or remove or flicker a creature or anything, and you could just abuse the hell out of the stack by doing that. All right. So the question is, does your opponent have a control magic for the mighty Gwendolyn? He's got Coffin at least.
She's wonderful. She's a 3/5 body. Tap anytime on my turn. Not just during main phase, you can do during upkeep or whatever.
Right.
Or end step, technically. And they discard a card at random. It's like a Disrupting Scepter that blocks.
It's so brutal.
Well, could block.
Hypnotic Spectre that blocks, that has a huge robust body.
That can actually block.
The random discard is such a big deal. It's so much more powerful. So the question is, does Guillaume have to use his Coffin here to keep Gwendolyn out of play, or does he have the control magic? We're going to see. He's got 3 or 4 cards in hand.
I mean, he should have drawn it by now, I think.
Well, he's about halfway through his deck. You'd think he'd get it to either Brain Geyser. So he's checking the graveyard right now. He also has Recall, too. And that's just another super powerful weapon against you that you're going to have to deal with. Oh, he's got Animate Dead.
I was thinking about putting Recall in my deck, actually, because with the blue splash, it's so much in these sort of middling situations mid-game. You can get back 2-3 cards for just a couple lands.
Absolutely. The card is so powerful in a singleton format because you only have singular copies of so many important tools. I talked about this in the deck tech video, but Recall is at its absolute best in this format, probably even more so than in regular Old School, where you just have tons and tons of redundancy. But being able to go into your graveyard and get 3 of the best cards in your graveyard right back into your hand is often, absolutely decisive in the same way that Yawgmoth's Will is in more contemporary formats. So he's obviously checking your graveyard here because he's got Animate Dead.
Yep.
And he's got to think it through. He finally drew black mana. We saw him discard the Guardian Beast earlier to the Mind Twist. So he's got to consider.
Right.
What do you think he should take here?
I think it's something like, I forget. Is there like an Archeo?
Yeah,
Guardian Beast is kind of nice. He really seems to like his Ices and Tanos.
Yeah.
I'm just. It doesn't matter what he takes. If he does anything, I just lose. I mean, I'm in such a fragile state right now.
Yeah, getting mana flooded right now with no real way to draw through cards.
Technically mana flood even for me. I run a lot of sources. I'm sort of relying on those books, you know.
Yeah, of course. No, I totally understand. I very much. So why is he tapping Gwendolyn here?
wants to attack, I guess.
I guess, yeah. To me, the obvious choice here is you animate Argivian Archaeologist and you protect it with Taunus's Coffin. Because Taunus's Coffin actually, even though it removes the creature from play, it keeps enchantments on it. So
Really?
he'll actually, yes, the enchantment goes with the creature. It doesn't fall
Oh,
off the way that other things behave. So
right.
the archaeologist will come back into play when he untaps the coffin. And if he's got an archaeologist running, he's got access to Chaos Orb. He can get his Jam Day Tome back. He can
Right,
get his
right.
disc
Get
back.
that
You're
infinite combo,
basically
yeah.
you're basically just done.
How many times could he do that in a turn? As much as he has mana, right? He could kill 3 of my lands or something.
No. He can only use the archaeologist once per turn to get the orb back because it taps it.
Gotcha.
Wow, that is, to me, this is just a crazy play. I don't understand this play at all. Getting back a Triskelion, and he's Sonic Blasting.
Yeah, he's got the Psy Blast. Yeah.
Oh, he's killing you. Okay, well, now I understand it. No brainer. All right, so I didn't realize that you were at 7 there. Of course, that makes it very obvious. Okay, we should pause the game here. So I'm going to pause.
Actually,
After you guys clean up here, I'm just going to let you pick up the cards. We can talk about it. I guess I understand the play right there. When your opponent's at 7 and you have Triskelion plus Sonic Blast, you can close it out. And you finally got through with enough damage. So, wow, that was one hell of a grueling game, wasn't it? I was
sitting on that side of the table just so frustrated at my deck, cursing the gods of randomness.
Yeah, it does happen. There's unfortunately to build a sizable and robust mana base to get these decks to really work, particularly when you're playing multiple colors. You really just have to run a lot of lands, and you really are hurt by the fact you kind of take it for granted in regular old school formats just how much you rely and lean on all those card drawing spells that are redundant in your deck, having Ancestral, Brain Geyser, and Regrowth to get it back, and Demonic Tutor to go get things, and multiple Jam Day Tomes, and often Time Twister and Wheel, and just kind of an abundance of card drawing spells. And in this format, you're often just top decking. It almost feels like you're playing a limited format a lot of the time. And anybody who's played sealed deck or draft knows what it's like to just sit there.
It feels a lot like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that feeling because it's, I don't know, it can get a little stale when you can just play all the good cards. And like if you look at the Swedish format, it's just, everybody has, at least 8 cards in common, if not 12.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like unless some major things happen, some structural things happen to old school format in general, and this is something I've talked about in plenty of videos, and I have a half-finished article that I've been teasing for months and months and months, which is basically addressing some of the sort of deeper systemic problems with old school. But the format feels very, very solved pretty much across the board. The only people who I think are actually really doing innovation with old school now are the Italians, and that is because they banned the Library of Alexandria, and I believe either restricted or banned Strip Mine, and they've restricted Mishra's Factory. And Mishra's Factory restriction, I think, is the big change.
It's so oppressive, actually.
It's so oppressive and really honestly ruins the format, I think, in both Swedish and...
If they could change it back to the old tapped creatures don't do damage thing.
Yes, that's one fix for it, but I think that there's just deeper problems with it. It's just the way that the format works nowadays. I go into detail about it in my article, so I'll save it for another conversation. But I think that would be a sort of reasonable fix for it. But the main problem I feel is that the factories just give the control decks in the format too much ability to interact and win the game without actually having to include win conditions, and that just makes them better. It just makes the decks artificially strong.
Better too.
Yeah, the fact that it's just a cost versus risk calculus that everybody just immediately decides, okay, well, clearly it's correct to just put 4 generic producing lands in my deck. It costs me so little to do that versus what it benefits my deck, and everybody is doing that. And in terms of, you look historically at what cards satisfy the criteria for restriction, that is it. It's basically, I'm building my deck, and what are the first 4 cards I put in my deck because they're unrestricted? Well, it's 4 Mishra's Factories, and everybody runs them no matter what the theme or purpose of their deck is. And to me, that is the strongest argument historically for why cards got restricted in the first place. And Factory has been basically satisfying that criteria for over a decade, and it's time to do something about it. But we've been covering these first two games for quite a while. I'm going to cut this video off before we get to the third game. This is a best of 3, so you guys are about to move to game 3. And for our dear viewers, you have that to look forward to next. Guys, thanks for sticking around. This was a long conversation, very, very interesting. 2 great games. Thank you so much, Evan. and we will see you for Game 3 coming up in a little while.